She banned her mother from the wedding. But what her mom did that day left everyone in tears. This isn't a script. This isn't a Netflix drama. This is real. A story published, reposted, and fiercely debated across dozens of American family columns. Back in 2002, a mother, a daughter, and a single sentence that shattered years of silence. Please don't come. Watch it online. But what happened next wasn't anger. It was something far more powerful. I was there. I witnessed it all. And now, it's time you heard the truth, because what happened might change how you think about forgiveness forever. On a windless Tuesday morning, Linda Brewster, 58 years old, living alone in a small wooden cabin on the outskirts of Eugene, Oregon, opened her laptop to check her emails, just like she did every day. Her only daughter, Chloe, was getting married next month. Linda was hoping to find a detailed schedule, maybe a few excited lines, a warm invitation to help pick out the wedding dress. But there was just one line. Please don't come. Watch it online. No greeting, no explanation, not even a mom. Linda sat motionless in her rocking chair by the window, her hand resting lightly on the computer mouse. Inside her chest, there was no sound of shattering, just a cold, hollow stillness, like someone had flung open the doors to her heart, and the wind rushed in. No one can prepare for the moment their own child shuts them out of the most important day of their life. Linda didn't cry. Her eyes blinked. Once. And then stopped. Outside, the sunlight still trickled through the maple trees. But to Linda, that morning felt like winter had come back. Unannounced. Again. Linda leaned her head back against the chair, her gaze drifting toward the small backyard, the same patch of grass that once held the barefoot prints of a little Chloe. She used to wear a purple princess robe, gripping a wildflower like a royal scepter, belting out songs she made up on the spot. One time it rained, and Chloe ran in circles through the wet grass, laughing so hard she hiccuped her soaked hair plastered to her cheeks. Linda stood under the porch towel in hand, worried sick, but smiling all the same. Being a single mom was never easy. An elementary school teacher living paycheck to paycheck, Linda made it work, tutoring at night, selling homemade cookies at the weekend market. But Chloe was never short on love. They were a world unto themselves, complete, whole, enough. Until the year Chloe turned 17. One autumn evening, Chloe looked at her angry and asked, "Why haven't you ever told me about my dad?" That question, it sliced right through the peace they had built, like a knife through quiet. Linda stumbled for words, and for the first time ever, her daughter's eyes didn't look at her like she was the center of the universe. From that moment on, the distance began to grow. Silent, but cold, like midnight frost, settling on the soul. After graduating college, Chloe moved to Boston to work for an interior design firm. A new city, a new life, new friends. And Linda slowly got pushed to the sidelines. The phone calls came less and less. Then they became just texts. Short, cold. "I'm fine, don't worry." Every year, Linda still sent birthday gifts, a hand-knit scarf, a book with little notes tucked between the pages. At Christmas, she wrote greeting cards by hand, still using the same rounded handwriting she once taught her first graders. Her emails were long. She told stories about the persimmon tree blooming early in the backyard. She brought up memories like when they used to collect maple leaves at Spencer Butte Park. But what came back? Nothing. Or sometimes, a dry, robotic line. "Thanks, Mom. I'm busy." Linda began to wonder, when did love become a burden? Was it when she stopped telling bedtime stories, or the day she refused to lie about Chloe's father inside that quiet little house? Unopened gifts, piled up in drawers, silent witnesses to a mother who never stopped loving, even when that love stopped being welcome. 3 years ago, on a freezing February morning, Linda got a phone call from one of Chloe's old friends, one of the few who still kept in touch. "Chloe had a minor car accident," the voice said over the line. "It's nothing serious, but she's taking a few days off. I thought you should know." Linda hung up, her heart pounding in messy, uneven beats. She didn't think twice. 2 hours later, she had already booked a flight to Boston. She packed a small bag with early Lunar New Year gifts, a soft beige scarf, and a jar of her homemade chicken stew, Chloe's favorite. As she stood outside Chloe's apartment, the one she shared with her boyfriend Linda, imagined the scene. Her daughter crying with relief, throwing her arms around her just like in the movies. But when the door opened, reality looked nothing like that. Chloe stood there, her hand lightly bandaged, her eyes filled with surprise. And something else. Annoyance. "What are you doing here?" Chloe asked, her brows furrowing. Linda gave a soft smile, trying to keep her voice calm. "I heard you had an accident. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." Chloe sighed. "You didn't have to come. I have someone taking care of me. Someone taking care of me." Those 5 words hit Linda in the softest, most fragile place in her heart. She stood there silent, the bag of soup suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "All right," Linda said, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I'll just drop this off. Then I'll go." That night, Linda stayed at a small hotel 2 blocks away from Chloe's apartment. They had dinner together once in silence. Each tried to smooth the tension with small talk. Work, weather, real estate prices. Chloe didn't ask anything about her mother, and Linda, even with 1,000 things she wanted to say, just smiled. On the way back to the hotel, she stopped at a souvenir shop. On one of the shelves sat a small wooden picture frame. Etched into it were the words, "Home is where your heart is." Linda bought it, not for Chloe, but to remind herself, sometimes the place where you used to matter is also the place you have to leave. The next morning, she left a sticky note on the fridge. "I'm heading back to Oregon. If you ever need anything, I'm still here." The flight that day was bitter cold. Linda leaned her forehead against the airplane window, watching clouds drift by. And in her chest, something cracked open, quietly, without drama, just a truth that couldn't be denied. Her daughter now had someone to care for her, and she, once Chloe's whole world, was now just someone from the past, with no place left to stay. One late August afternoon, with golden sunlight still pouring over the maple trees by the porch, Linda received an email from Chloe. The subject line was short: "Save the date. Chloe and Martin." Her heart gave a soft thump. Even though she had stopped hoping long ago, a part of her still imagined something different. A formal invitation. Or at least, a simple question. "Mom, can you come?" But when she opened the message, all she saw was a digital card. A photo of Chloe in a plain white dress standing next to a man Linda had only glimpsed once or twice on social media. Below the image, delicate script read, "Ceremony will be live-streamed at 4 p.m. Saturday. Link to follow." No greeting. No mom. No church address. No family seating. Just a cold mass announcement. Linda read it again and again. Even though she knew she hadn't missed anything, she still hoped. For a tiny note, a personal line, a sentence hidden after a period. But there was nothing. A few minutes later, she printed out the card and carefully laid it on the dining table. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the notebook beside the stove and wrote a short, neat reminder, just like the ones she used to jot on student essays. Watch online, 4 p.m. Saturday. In the days that followed, Linda prepared as if she were attending the wedding in person. She ironed a pale lavender dress, did her hair, picked out the earrings Chloe had given her back in high school. Not because she planned to go, but because she thought maybe her daughter would still want to see her, even if only through a screen. On the morning of the wedding, Linda woke early, brewed a cup of chamomile tea, and set her alarm for 3:45 p.m. Her computer was open, the internet connection steady. But when the clock struck 3:40, Linda stood up, walked to the table, and gently closed the laptop. Not out of anger. Not because she was hurt, but because deep in her heart, she understood one thing. Watching a live stream is not the same as being invited. Linda stepped out onto the porch, carrying her tea and an old photo album. She opened to a page with a picture of 5-year-old Chloe, dressed like a princess, laughing under golden sunlight. "I was there for every moment of your beginning," she whispered. "Just this once. I don't need to witness it to know I'm no longer part of the story. Not every absence is surrender. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to keep the part of you that once belonged whole and at peace." On Friday morning, the day before the wedding, Linda woke before the sun had even risen. She didn't open her computer. She didn't check her email. She didn't tell anyone. In silence, she packed 3 things into the trunk of her car: a deep blue dress she had worn the day Chloe graduated college, a leather-bound photo album worn at the corners, and a handwritten letter, one she had written, revised, and recopied carefully over the last 3 months. She drove her old Toyota across the Cascade Mountains, hundreds of miles of highway ahead. No music, no long rest stops, just the road. With every passing mile, memories returned Chloe taking her first steps in Linda's arms. Chloe's first day of school, her first tears over a bad grade. The drive took 12 hours, but to Linda, it felt like a final pilgrimage of motherhood. No welcome needed, no reply expected. That night, she stayed in a small motel on the outskirts of Boston. The next morning, she rose early, slipped into the blue dress, pinned a simple silver hair clip in place. She wore no makeup. Her face carried the calm of someone who had already made the most important decision of her life. At 3:15 p.m., Linda drove to the address from the email, a small Gothic church tucked between modern buildings. Outside, guests were already arriving. The click of heels on pavement, laughter, light music drifting through the glass doors. Linda didn't go inside. She parked a short distance away, just far enough to remain unseen but close enough to watch. Through the car window, she saw Chloe step out of a white limousine, her arm looped through, that of a man Linda assumed was the stepfather, a stranger in her daughter's life. Chloe was glowing, not the kind of glow that begs to prove something, but the quiet radiance of a woman who had chosen her path. Linda watched. She didn't cry. She only gripped the photo album tighter in her lap. Once Chloe and the groom disappeared into the church, Linda stepped out of the car. She crossed the street, holding a small parcel wrapped in elegant floral paper. She didn't go inside. Instead, she approached a young woman collecting gifts in the foyer. Linda leaned in and whispered, "For the bride." From Linda. Then she turned away. No questions. No thank you needed. As Linda sat back in her car, the church bells rang out, echoing across the city like soft reminders that everything had changed. But she wasn't sad, because she had come. Quietly, without demand, without stepping in. Just to say one final thing that Chloe might never read aloud, but would one day understand. "I didn't come to witness your wedding. I came to let you go. One last time." Inside the gift box Linda had left at the front table, wrapped in elegant floral paper, was everything she had carried with her across the long road from Oregon to Boston. No flowers, no luxurious wedding gifts like the others, being passed around the chapel. But to Linda, it was everything she had left to give her daughter. On top was an old photo album, its chestnut leather cover faded by time. Inside were photographs Linda had carefully selected over countless nights, Chloe as a newborn wrapped in the hand-knit blanket Linda made herself. Chloe in a princess dress, paper crown on her head, blowing out the candles on her 5th birthday. Chloe standing next to her graduation nameplate, eyes glowing with pride. Tucked between each photo were handwritten notes. You learned how to tie your shoes that day. I remember when you said, "One day I'll buy you a house, Mom." I didn't say anything then, but I cried all night from pride. Beneath the album was a letter, handwritten in soft purple ink. Linda had written it many times. Each time she tore it up, then started over, until the words no longer carried blame. Only love. In the letter, she didn't speak of sadness. She didn't mention the cold emails or the unanswered calls. She wrote only about of love with no conditions, no expectations. Dear Chloe, I'm not writing this letter to make you feel guilty. I just want you to know that no matter where you go, what you do, who you love, or what life you choose, to me, you'll always be the little girl who held my hand in the grocery store and asked, "Mom, can I be a superhero?" You don't need to come back until you're ready. But if one day you feel tired, not because you need me, but just because you want to, then I'll still be here. Still making your favorite chicken soup. Still keeping your room the same shade of purple. And I'll still be your mom. That's all. The letter sat atop a thick envelope. Inside was a check for $10,000. It was every penny Linda had saved from decades of teaching untouched, never spent on herself. Every time she earned a little bonus, she wrote a note beside it. Save for Chloe's wedding day. She wouldn't get to sit in the front row, wouldn't walk her daughter down the aisle, wouldn't hear anyone call her the bride's mother. But that check, it was still a part of her, a part she hoped could walk with Chloe into her new life. Quietly, gently. When the young receptionist noted the name on the card, Linda simply nodded. No need to confirm. She'll know. Then she left, without looking back. Not because she was sad, but because she believed that gift and that love would find its way back at exactly the right time. Linda returned to Oregon on an early morning in mid-September. Her car rolled quietly down the narrow road that led to her little wooden house. The maples had started to shed their leaves, whispering that autumn had arrived. Everything looked the same. The old wooden fence still needed painting. The worn-out wall still bore faded pencil marks where she used to track Chloe's height. No one was waiting. No message came asking if she'd arrived safely. But this time, Linda didn't feel empty. She carefully folded the blue dress, placed the photo album in the desk drawer, and locked it. Not to forget, but to move forward. In the weeks that followed, Linda did something she hadn't done since Chloe left home. She lived for herself. She signed up for a painting class at the local community center, where she met women just like her mothers. Wives, caregivers, all of them now learning how to become just themselves again. She chose to paint landscapes, rows of golden trees in fall. The porch swing that creaked in the wind, an old pair of shoes resting quietly on the front steps. Her paintings weren't perfect, but they were tender and calm, just like her. On weekends, she joined a cooking class titled, "For Those Who Once Cooked for Others and Now Cook for Themselves." Linda learned to make lasagna apple pie, even spicy Thai soup, not to send to anyone, not to impress, just to enjoy the scent filling a quiet kitchen, a kitchen that once only reheated leftovers. Sometimes Linda still came across Chloe's wedding photos, shared by distant relatives on Facebook. In them, Chloe beamed under an arch of white flowers, her gown full and flowing eyes sparkling. Linda looked for a long time. And yes, there were moments she cried, but not from regret, only from memory. Memories drifting in like a soft breeze through the window on a lonely afternoon. But this time, the tears carried no anger. She no longer asked why, no longer longed for replies. Instead, she felt something else. Lightness, as if a door inside her had finally closed quietly, without sound. Linda was still a mother, but she no longer needed to be the center of that world. She had learned to love without clinging, to remember without needing to be remembered. And in that gentle letting go, she found something she'd lost for years: peace. One late autumn afternoon, just as Linda finished brewing a cup of chamomile tea and was picking out colors for the half-finished painting on her easel, her computer chimed. A new email. She opened her inbox, her eyes scrolling past the usual promotions and newsletters, until they stopped on a name that made her heart skip a beat: Chloe Brewster. Linda's hand trembled slightly as she hovered over the subject line. There was no greeting, no clear subject. Just a simple line: I read your letter. I don't know what to say, but thank you. That was it. No apology, no explanation, not even a mom. But it was the first message in years that Chloe had sent of her own accord. Not as a reply, not because someone nudged her, not out of politeness, just because. Linda sat quietly for a while, the golden light of sunset spilling across her desk, turning the dried petals on the windowsill a soft orange hue. She didn't reply right away, not because she was upset, but because she wanted to hold this moment, to mark it. Not too loudly, but just enough to know the door hadn't closed all the way. The letter she had written over the course of 3 long months had finally reached Chloe. And even though it came with only one short line in return, Linda knew her daughter had read it, had thought about it, and somewhere deep inside her, the thread between them still existed. Linda wasn't waiting for a miracle. She didn't dream of Chloe showing up on her doorstep in the rain, arms flung around her, sobbing, "Mom, I'm home." No. But that one line: I read your letter. I don't know what to say, but thank you. That was enough, because in the world of a mother who once got pushed to the edge, sometimes even the smallest words can light a lamp. Not one that burns brightly, not one that warms the whole room, but just enough to remind her that the love she gave still had somewhere to return to. That afternoon, Linda sat on the porch, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, eyes following the bright red maple leaves as they floated gently down onto the wooden steps. The air was crisp. Winter was coming. But inside, Linda felt still and warm. She no longer thought much about the wedding, or the short message, or the years of giving without receiving. She didn't wonder anymore if Chloe would call, or come home, or ever mention to someone, anyone, that she still had a mother living in a small wooden house in Oregon. Linda no longer lived in expectation. She didn't open her inbox with a clenched heart, didn't draft and delete emails in the middle of the night, didn't imagine movie script reunions anymore. She had learned how to love without needing to be loved back the way she had hoped. She had learned how to hold memories without letting them drown her. She had learned that love doesn't always survive through presence, but through quiet kindness, persistent, patient, unshakable. Beside her on a small table, a half-finished painting showed the silhouette of a little girl running through a garden, hair flying, bare feet, muddy, a princess dress stained with joy. Linda smiled. Maybe Chloe would come back. Maybe she wouldn't. But Linda no longer felt like someone left behind. She was simply a woman who once loved her child with everything she had. And sometimes, she believed that was enough. Love isn't about being invited. It's about showing up, even if only in silence.